Welcome to Weight Loss and Wellness for Real, the podcast where people like you get the practical solutions and support you need to permanently lose the physical and mental weight so you can feel better and live the life you want in the body and mind you want. If you're looking to overcome your stress eating, overeating, binging behaviors, and move to a place of freedom with food and your body, you're in the right place. Hello, everyone. I hope you are all doing great today. I also hope you have implemented one or two practical strategies from my last episode about reframing into your life this past week. If you have, you are likely seeing some changes in your thoughts and behaviors already, and it's important to give yourself a little credit for making these changes and keep it going into this next week. The longer you stick to these small, very doable strategies, you will see more and more changes taking place. And this creates that momentum and more willingness, which keeps you on the path to your goals and dreams. Today, I'm going to talk about a topic that is out there in the nutrition and wellness world that seems to be on fire these days. Everyone is talking about it. So I figured I'd throw in my 2 cents about fasting. So first of all, fasting is really trendy right now. It's been around. It's been around forever. In the past, it was often a part of religious beliefs, and still is for some today. And currently, it's being used mostly for health and weight loss. So fasting simply means going without food. What you're probably hearing more about is intermittent fasting, which involves cycling between periods of fasting and eating. You've probably heard of a 16-8 fast, which means going without food for 16 hours and eating only within that leftover 8-hour window. Most people stop eating at a specific time at night and then don't eat again until the next day at a specific time. So if I stop eating at 7 p.m., I wouldn't eat again until 11 the next morning if I'm doing that 16-8 fast. So 16 hours of not eating. There are many types of intermittent fasting, and I am going to talk about quite a few of those later on in this. So when I work with clients who want to try intermittent fasting for weight loss, I often change our language first, the way that we're talking about it. So if you've been listening to a few other of my episodes, you know by now that I am a stickler for the language we use to talk to ourselves as well as to others. The words we use and how we talk to ourselves and narrate our stories really matter in how we feel emotionally and therefore how we behave. Because remember the think, feel, behavior framework. You know, how we think creates our feelings, and all feelings come along with sensations that pulse through our body. And then from that, we are motivated to behave in certain ways. So I always want to have my clients thinking in terms of abundance and not lack. The very word fasting creates a feeling of lack, and this is not helpful for anyone who has some disordered eating patterns, stress eating, emotional eating, or for anyone who binges around food. When one is struggling with eating patterns like that, it's really important to use language that does not trigger a feeling of restriction or of lack. If someone's brain with these eating patterns senses lack or restriction due to using words that represent lack or scarcity, like fasting, subconsciously or even consciously, the brain is going to work to stop this behavior. So instead of using the word intermittent fasting, I like to use the term intermittent feeding or intermittent eating. And I want you just to think about this for a second. See if you can kind of sense the difference, or sort of, not to get too out there, but feel the difference behind those words. Feel the different energy. When you tell yourself, when you tell your brain, you're going to intermittent fast versus intermittent eat. One carries the feeling or sensations of lack, and the other has the feelings or sensation of abundance. And if you struggle with overeating and you're trying to lose weight, you want to always be coming from a feeling of abundance and not scarcity. When you come from scarcity, thoughts around food, and you're dealing with disordered eating patterns, your brain will work overtime to get you to eat more. So it'll throw up all kinds of urges and cravings. When you use language that has abundance behind it, that sense of abundance behind it, your brain doesn't get scared about it starving. It doesn't freak out that you're going to restrict food from it. So it calms down a bit, and you're going to experience less cravings and urges. So that's your first practical strategy, which I'll revisit at the end again anyway to remind you. But no more using the word intermittent fasting. Use the term intermittent eating. Okay, so some of the benefits that current research is pointing to that intermittent eating contributes to is weight loss, which basically can happen with this through a net calorie deficit. And so one loses weight. Basically, because your eating window is shortened, you're eating in a shortened amount of time throughout the day, you end up just not eating as much food as you typically would, so you drop some weight. The other idea is that that what helps with intermittent feeding, or it may be a way to prevent metabolic adaptation from occurring when people lose weight. So meaning if you lose a lot of weight quickly, often you're going to regain everything back plus some. So I always think of, remember that show, The Biggest Loser? So The Biggest Loser phenomenon, their metabolic rates had slowed so significantly that they gained back all that incredible weight they had lost while only eating around 800 calories. The theory is that by intermittent feeding, the body doesn't kick in the hormones that promote weight gain after losing weight. Excuse me. So that's one other way that intermittent feeding can possibly help with weight loss. Another possible benefit is that people eating in this way might experience better insulin sensitivity, which lowers the risk of type 2 diabetes. So it reduces inflammation, it betters our mitochondria. It's also possible that intermittent feeding shifts your body into a state of ketosis, which burns fat rather than carbs. So ketones may trigger the body's own repair system, ultimately protecting against aging and disease. Another possible benefit is autophagy, which is described as, like the natural cellular housekeeping process where the body clears debris and other things that maybe stand in the way of the health of our mitochondria. And this begins when liver glycogen is depleted, and that happens when we are fasting. So those are just some of the possible benefits out there getting studied. Some pretty good, clear research too, that many of those are probably happening. Here's the problem with intermittent feeding. If one can adhere to it, if one can stick to it, it works for weight loss. So again, we kind of come back to that compliance and consistency. And that's part of the issue. Can you comply with this? Does it work for you? If you restrict too much, when you're trying to do this, then sarcopenia might occur, muscle wasting, muscle loss if you're not prioritizing protein. For my older listeners, if you're over 35, it's really important. You really want to hold on to as much muscle as you can as we age. Some other problems might come around women who are pregnant or trying to get pregnant. Too much fasting can often lead to throwing off the menstrual cycle, so this could be an issue. It might be tough if you are taking diabetes medication because blood sugar may drop too far in absence of food. And then if you have a history of eating disorder or disordered eating that involves unhealthy restriction of any kind, so anorexia, bulimia, that sort of thing, using fasting can trigger those behaviors. One other issue is if you end up, doing your eating earlier in the day, so you're doing 8-hour feeding window, early in the morning until mid-afternoon, there are some issues that can come up because it might interfere with family dinners or social times, which are also really important for our health and well-being. And it can also make you really crabby. So those are just some things you want to think about when you're deciding if you want to implement something like this or not. I intermittent fasted for almost, it was 7, 8, 9 years. I've been doing it for a really long time. And for most of those years, I would wait to eat until around lunchtime and stop eating by 8 p.m. And for many years, it worked really well for me. But towards, I would say years 7, 8, 9, probably years 8 and 9, I often was finding myself low on energy, crabby, just really having that low emotional bandwidth. So things were starting to shift at that point. And those are just things you want to watch too. It might work for you for a while, but when it starts to shift, then you need to change things again. Some people feel also that they can eat whatever they want during that feeding window, and that is just not true. Setting up intermittent fasting window does not mean like you can have this free reign and eat whatever you want during that time. Some people will take this to the max where they're literally just eating crap for those 8 hours. And, that doesn't work. To lose weight and get healthy, you still, during that time period, need to eat whole, healthy foods. It's not a tool that gives you untamed eating choices. So let's talk about the different styles or types of this eating pattern. There are quite a few methods. And what I've found in working with clients and lots of experimenting with myself, certain methods work for certain types of people, and some methods do not work at all for some people. Surprise, surprise. It's all about individuality and what works for you. So I'm just going to give you a rundown of some of the typical ones. So the first one is 5-2 intermittent feeding and eating. So this is where you would eat normally for 5 days, and the other 2 days you knock down your calories to like 500, 600 calories a day. So basically, not completely fasting for those 2 days, but pretty close. And it can work, but I have found compliance with this type is really hard. Remember that consistency is key for weight loss and for maintaining health. And for many of us, lessening our calories to 500, 600 a day is a setup to overeat the other 5 days, and the weight is gained right back. Feeling hungry does not work for many of us. It's hard to hold a job or, have energy at work. It's hard to engage with family members when you're feeling that hungry. And also, if you're an athlete or enjoy working out or training, this one is probably not going to be great for you. The other one is time-restricted eating. Here you choose how many hours in a day you're going to eat. Ideally, you should have 14 to 16 hours without eating. So your eating window would be like 12 to 8 p.m. or even better, what we're finding out now with circadian rhythms would be more like 9 to 5. So you're only eating between 9 to 5. Even better would be 7 a.m. to 3 p.m. I've been doing the 9 to 5, the 10 to 5 for the past 2 months, and I had found myself overeating in the evenings, and so I switched my eating window to earlier in the day to try to cut some of that out. And right now, for me, it works. It helps also because, my significant other kind of eats in the same way, so that makes it a little easier, but it may be tough if you can't be consistent. If your schedule is frequently changing, or you want to have date night or happy hour, or it's, you sit down with your family to eat and no one's sitting down to the table till 8 p.m. So this one might not work for you. You might have to switch that eating window till later in the evening. Okay, another one, overnight fasting. And this might be the simplest fasting. And this is where you basically fast for a 12-hour period. It does appear from some current research that autophagy may still happen with a 12-hour fast. It's not as robust, but it's possible. So you would stop eating at 7 p.m. and not eat again until 7 a.m. It's usually the minimum recommended for any health benefits that you're looking for. Another method called Eat, Stop, Eat simply explains it just means that taking a break from food is fasting. You also complete 1 or 2 24-hour fasts per week. Again, I just do not see much compliance from this type of fasting. At least, with the clients I'm working with. Doesn't mean it won't work for everyone. Whole day fasting, this is 24 hours, but you actually eat dinner one day and then you don't eat again until dinner the next day, which means 24-hour fast. I've messed around with this one a little, and once in a while I enjoy it. I usually do it on a whim. If I wake up not hungry one day and just don't experience hunger throughout the day, I may push my eating again until dinner time just to get that 24-hour fast in. And another method, alternate day fasting. Every other day you eat. Again, not a lot of compliance in the real world or for anyone who deals with using food emotionally, some disordered eating patterns. So here's how in general fasting works for weight loss. When we're not eating for a period of time, our insulin levels go down, and our fat cells can then release their stored sugar to be used as energy. Remember, you can think of insulin as a storage hormone in simplest terms. It works to store fat in our cells. So when we eat particularly high carbohydrate, when that goes into our body, our insulin comes out to help store. It does a whole bunch of other things, but just in simplest terms, to help store what we need in our cells. So we often can lose weight if we allow our insulin levels to go down. The idea behind fasting is to allow the insulin levels to go down far enough and for long enough that we burn off fat. So here's a little nuance though. If you train hard, and I have a lot of clients who, are amateur athletes, they train a lot, many hours a day. If you train hard and regularly and have no weight issues, by the way, I see a lot of people who run or bike for many, many hours a day and are still overweight. So if you are training hard but still overweight, that's a whole other podcast probably to get into. But your focus if you are athletic, you don't need to lose weight. Your focus needs to be more on fueling your body for your athletic goals. If you're training hard or for multiple hours a day, your body is not going to be optimal through any type of fasting. Here's how we know intermittent fasting will not always work to get someone lean. Take a look at bodybuilders. They're ripped, lean. Traditionally, they eat often, like multiple times throughout the day, many, many small meals through the day. So the idea would say, our fasting idea would say that their insulin is up all day long and they should be storing fat, but because they're working out so hard and so much, that insulin is taken care of. Weight loss still occurs. This is why it's recommended even to walk after eating, as that walking, that movement, that even that light exercise kind of sops up the insulin and can help with weight loss. My point is that fasting is not the end all be all of weight loss. There are many nuances and individual differences and lifestyles that are going to determine if fasting works for you or not. So what might be best for you? If you have an emotional stress eating behavior, then sticking to trying intermittent feeding during a day is much more likely to work for you than trying to fast for a whole day or days at a time. Because in this situation, if you're a person who deals with that stress eating, that emotional eating, binging, food is a huge part of a person's emotional life. It's too white knuckling, too much energy to fast for a day or multiple days. I find that clients who come to me and who have done this in the past end up eating way too much on days or weeks after white knuckling through a fast. They end up gaining more weight, and it is much harder to get it off. If the client still wants the health benefits of fasting, we instead focused on timed eating or timed feeding windows. Usually, the first one I might introduce is a 16-8 fast. They stop eating at 7 or 8 p.m. and wait to eat until around 11 or noon the next day. That sort of pattern often has a lot more compliance. People usually say it's doable as long as their food choices during the feeding window are on point, whole foods, protein, etc. They will lose weight. But do notice what I said. If a person does a 16-8 fast, but during that 8-hour feeding window, they consume a lot of food, they overeat, they eat a lot of sweets, treats, a box of donuts, a carton of ice cream, a bag of whatever, these people will definitely gain weight. The point is that the timing of food can help with weight loss, but it doesn't do it on its own. You really still, unfortunately, have to eat responsibly during the feeding window. My history with intermittent fasting, intermittent feeding has been a positive one overall. Those many years of eating to eat, where I'd wait to eat until noon, worked for that period of time like I talked about. And like I said, recently switching, because it wasn't working, so recently switching to stopping eating between 5 or 6 p.m., not starting till, 9, 10, 11. I started using this timing of eating just because I wasn't getting good sleep at night. That was shifting for me like I used to. And stopping earlier in the evening really helped me with sleep. I still sometimes have a little bit of protein before bed if I feel I need it to sleep a bit better. And I've just been doing this for so long and paying attention that I kind of know those nights. I just know the feeling if I'm not going to sleep great, might be a little too hungry. And so a little bit of protein right before bed. And then also some nights I do have a glass of wine or I do eat past 5 or 6 due to date night or something social going on. My point is you don't have to be dogmatic about this. It does not need to be all or nothing. I think it's great to experiment with some intermittent feeding as it does appear to have some health benefits, but reminding yourself that you still want to live life, enjoy life. You can still set some guidelines for your eating behavior, but there will be times you can be flexible. So don't get caught up in the all or nothing, black and white, restricted thinking. This does not help and always sabotages weight loss. So here are some practical strategies you can try to implement this week. First of all, change your language about fasting. Use the words interval eating or intermittent eating. When you tell people what you're trying or when you're talking to yourself in your mind about what you're trying, use the word intermittent feeding. Do not use the word fasting. And then try this. Try eating only 3 meals a day. Don't snack in between. Give your insulin a rest in between meals. Even fasting in between meals can bring some benefits. And if you're someone who loves your snack food, try this. You can still have that snack food if you're not willing to give it up just yet, but eat it with your meal. So for example, you love to have chocolate. That's me, obviously. I've talked about chocolate in many a episode here. Or you like to have ice cream or popcorn later in the evening. Or maybe you're someone who has dinner and then snacks throughout the evening, just kind of picking a couple things out of the fridge or the pantry. So your first leveled up behavior would be to have dinner. And as part of your dinner, is you want to incorporate that snack that you would typically eat later. So you have a steak, a salad, and then with the meal, you eat your chocolate or your chips or your popcorn. You eat it right then. And then you're done. You're done for the night. So you don't have to give up your favorite foods, but you move them to eat them with your regular meal. That's one way to stretch yourself just a little bit with food, but not having to grieve the loss of your favorite food. What often happens with this is the client then doesn't feel as restricted. So we don't have the negative eating spiral that comes from restriction mentality. But most will find also that they don't need as much of their favorite food to feel content or satisfied because they've already eaten that dinner. So they end up eating much less of the chocolate, much less of the chips than they would if they had ate it later in the evening. And then just one last, remember that the best way of eating or diet for you is the one that you can stick with for life. If you try some intermittent feeding protocols and it's miserable and you know you will never keep it going, just be done. It is so not worth your time and energy. Focus instead on healing your relationship with food, using thought work to find food freedom and implementing other ways of dieting to lose weight. Small changes every day that you can try on and see what works best for you is the best strategy to go with. If you decide to try something like this, remember you need to talk with your doctor and get the okay. Okay, so anything I present in any of these, if you're shifting eating patterns or diets, you really want to talk with your doctor first and make sure you're ready to go. Okay, I'm going to end it there. One more thing though, I have had a new episode release every week for almost 30 weeks now, but there will not be one released the week after this one. So just a heads up, I am taking a much needed rock climbing and mountain biking trip, and I'm not going to be recording anything during that time. So after you hear this one, there will be a week where one is not released, and then the new episode will re-release after that. If you found anything useful from this episode, would you please consider sharing it with someone, friends or family that you think might benefit from it, and possibly also posting it on your social media. That helps get more listeners, which helps me keep putting this information out there for free on this platform. If you've already subscribed, I really do appreciate it. And I really do appreciate you spending this time with me and listening. And I do hope you're finding something that you can take and implement into your life, and consider making those small changes that get you closer to your goals and dreams. You can head over to my social media for more resources. You can find me on Instagram at Heinen Counseling and Coaching. Heinen is spelled Heynen. You can I also have a recipes only page with high protein recipes, and that's at Peak Protein Recipes on Instagram. And check out my website, heatherheinen.com. If you keep listening right now, you're going to get some more information on how my clients take a deeper dive on these topics with me through online programs and coaching. It's where you get the actual structured lessons, worksheets, journal prompts, support, and coaching behind all this information I'm putting out there to lose your weight for good, improve your health, and live the life you've been dreaming about in the body you've been dreaming about. I hope you are finding something useful from these episodes and this podcast. And if so, please share it with someone else in your life you feel it could benefit. This podcast is also now monetized. So if you really feel you are getting a lot from it and want to help keep it going, please go to the episode show notes. You can just scroll down from wherever you're listening. You'll see a description of the episode, and then you will see it says support this podcast. And then there's a link you can click on. You can click on that link, and that's where you can support the podcast. Even the smallest donation, like 99 cents, helps to keep me producing the podcast. And to those of you who have donated, I really, really appreciate the support. I really do appreciate all of you listening and sharing the space with me. Again, just very thankful for all of you. Did you know you can find a lot more help from me on my website? Go to heatherheinen.com. Heinen is spelled Heynen, and get in touch with questions on all things I offer, like online courses for overeating, weight loss, goal attainment, and also my coaching and counseling services.